paving the way for that new budget. Business Leadership South Africa's CEO, Busi Mavuso, says it is time for government to critically assess which departments are delivering value to taxpayers and demonstrate the political courage needed to make tough decisions where they are not. Godongwana is set to present this revised budget on the morning of the 21st of this month. Let's talk to BLSA CEO Busi Mavuso now. Busi, good morning. Thank you very much for your time and thanks for waking up early with us. You've said cutting government spending is the only realistic option, but what specific areas should be first on the chopping block?
Yeah, good morning, Iman. And I think that is a very difficult call that the politicians are actually going to have to make. I think if you look at the IMF Fiscal Monitor report that was issued last month, Iman, that speaks about the global growth forecasts, being cut. South Africa is also affected. We're going to start the year at a 1.5% projected economic growth according to the IMF, and it has now been slashed down to 1%, and the World Bank is actually slashing it down further to 0.7%. So it therefore tells us, that in the light of all the things that we're actually facing, with all the challenges that we're facing domestically and internationally, this budget 3.0 is going to have to make very tough decisions. The report also implores the minister to not veer off the fiscal path. The minister, therefore, in tabling budget 3.0, cannot spiral. He needs to remain on track as per the IMF warning. The report clearly says that unless government tightens fiscal policy, South Africa's public debt will rise to 88% of GDP by 2030, far higher than the 73% level that National Treasury is aiming for in its planned fiscal trajectory. And it encourages us to take more measures to bring down the debt level, saying that we should target a 60 to 70%, debt target as it were. So it therefore means, in this challenging environment, which is also exacerbated by the external headwinds, particularly the trade conflict sparked by the US and the geopolitics, there's going to be less tax revenue available to government. As business, I
want to circle back to that. I'll come to that in a second. I just want to go back to, from your perspective then, the concept of the chopping block and, what should be cut then?
I cannot say, I'm not actually going to make,
okay.
We really don't have a view, but I think I think this is more a principles, approach, Iman. And I think from where we're sitting as the business community, we are really clearly saying that there is a proliferation of entities that do not add value in government. We cannot continue setting up new projects. We cannot continue creating new spending lines. We need to therefore look at what are those entities that are not delivering value. We need a mature and honest assessment of what parts of government are not delivering value to taxpayers. And I think in that light, the political bravery to then make the necessary decisions of cutting those spending lines is going to have to come in. And I'm sure National Treasury is already immensely looking at this, to see, what does cutting budgets, look like. As I'm saying, borrowing is not an option, Iman. We can't borrow ourselves out of this mess. So it's going to be a very interesting one.
If as you say, by 2030, our debt to GDP is going to reach that really horrible number of 88%, you've spoken just now as well about revised growth prospects for South Africa, with the World Bank going as far as 0.7%. What's the worst case scenario for our credit rating? And I think the most important thing is what it means for ordinary South Africans, Busi.
Exactly. And I think what it means for ordinary South Africans, if we're going to continue spending ourselves out of this mess, if we're going to continue using borrowings, as a measure to finance, our activities, to finance the country, to finance the spending that the politicians would not otherwise cut, it means that we're going to be sitting with a high debt trajectory, as a country, or high debt levels. It means borrowing for South Africa is actually going to be quite high. It means that we are actually going to be sitting with even higher, interest rate or interest costs, in our income statement. It means that getting out of this spiral is actually not going to be tenable. It therefore means that the IMF might actually have to come in, Iman, and actually take over the running of the country, for South Africa. It means that we'll lose, our sovereignty as a country, because remember, that is what, if you are highly indebted, that is what the IMF actually does. And when they do come in, we saw it with Greece a few years ago, when they do come in, they make the brutal decisions that you would have failed to make as a country. And I think that actually then becomes a very horrible picture, because then a whole lot of these expenses get cut to a bare minimum, which I think seriously means we talk about austerity right now. We haven't seen austerity yet. Austerity is what the IMF will actually implement, should they actually take over South Africa's sovereignty.
And that's an apocalyptic scenario. So given what you have just said, which really should make all of our ears burn, do you believe this government in its current form has the political courage to cut where it hurts, but also invest where it matters?
I do. I think if you look at the decisions that they've actually made so far, National Treasury has really worked very hard to turn around the crisis of government finances, that we were 5 years ago. And the rating agencies have really noticed, and they've really improved our outlook, of our credit rating. So we really need towards making sure that we work towards the investment grade credit rating. The difficult decisions, by National Treasury has never been a difficult intervention for them to actually implement. And I think they are going to continue on that trajectory, because I really think that when you speak about institutional strength in this country, you speak about institutions like the National Treasury. And yes, they might have had, the hiccups, with the budget being presented for the third time now. But I really think that what they are doing is good work on behalf of South Africa. They are going to stick to the fiscal framework. They are going to stick to ensuring that we spend, within our means, and they are going to cut where it is actually necessary to cut. But I think this time around it's just going to be more difficult than what they've done, previously.
Yeah. We
always say this is going to be a difficult budget, every time we have a budget. But I think this one is going to be quite rather tough, for the minister.
Well, we'll all be watching it live on the 21st. Busi, Mavuso, thank you very much for talking to us this morning. Appreciate your time.